Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. The Interstellar Murder Hobo, First Trooper Lundgren Morrissey, Constabulary Grid. 7H6 of Earth's solar militia woke drowsily from what felt like a thick fog tinged green with a mild sense of nausea. He wasn't uncomfortable, but understood the night was over, and his hangover was coming, slowly creeping into his body from a distance. What did I do last night? I remember the girl Adrian sent, and drinking, so much drinking. He didn't feel much concern over his lack of memory. It wasn't his first blackout. Some memories always returned, and there was the footage to look forward to. He furrowed his brow as slowly growing behind his eyes, expanding over the top of his head. A headache made its presence known. It grew rapidly into a solid thump, forcing a hot gush of saliva flood his mouth, literally blushing his face with heat at the same time. Unable to control his own body, he rocked upwards to vomit, only to find himself restrained by the wrists above his head. With a viscous blub, the vomit tried to project, only to flop back into his mouth, down his chin, neck, and chest. This just induced another almighty heave, this time sensibly spilling it to his right. It pooled against his cheek. He slowly turned his face to the left in a lethargic bid to find reprieve. He took a moment to catch his breath and tried to open his eyes. The room was pitch black, and he questioned whether he had opened them at all. What did I let myself get into last night? He tried moving his legs and found them restrained as well. Ugh, enough of this. Hello, he croaked, his throat dry. The vomit had settled in the wells of his body weight, coating the back of his neck, sticking viscously to his right cheek and chin. He was getting annoyed that the girl had left him like this. He thrashed his whole body in a vain attempt to break out with brute force, to no avail. He just soiled himself even further. Just as he cleared his throat to shout, a stark light flashed on, and a steady, mature female voice spoke. Oh, for fuck's sake. It held no emotion. I guess we'll need to clean this up before we begin. You drank too much. My dosage off. Lundgren tried to get a look at her, squinting his eyes against the light, exacerbating his headache. She was small, no taller than 5 feet, and very slight. Definitely not the girl Adrian sent. He didn't recognize her at all, but only really cared to consider his odds. I have the advantage. I just need to wait. I am going to give you a paralytic I designed whilst doing a job on Io's Gravitech station. It works almost instantly, clears you up, suppresses your emotions, and has no nasty side effects. It requires a continuous dose though, so I'll add it to an IV. I'll restore some electrolytes while we're at it. He tried in vain to discern a tone in her voice. What do you mean by paralytic? His senses were returning to him, but only just. Did we, fuck or something? I am digging the bondage vibe and the aftercare, but I would like to be untied now. Oh, that's not a very good idea. At least not till you're fully paralyzed. The matter-of-fact tone sent a slight shiver down his spine. And no, we didn't, fuck or anything. The mimicry of his voice we perfect for tone and inflection. I need to clean you up, and to do that, I need to untie you. To do that, I would feel better if you weren't able to move. I trust my logic is clear. Lundgren considered his cool head under pressure a source of personal pride, which is why when panic started to tighten his chest, he was totally unprepared. His body froze as she stepped closer with a needle and IV bag in hand. He had no clue where they came from. It was like they had just materialized. He blinked to clear his vision a bit more and watched as she deftly penetrated a vein on the back of his right hand with a needle, just as matter-of-factly as her words dug into his heart. She pinned the tube to his wrist with a programmable medi-strap and hung the bag on a hook on the wall. "What do you want with me?" he asked, craning his head to take a look at his surroundings. It was a stark white room with a titanium water cylinder, a sonic hygiene basin and workstation to his right. The roof was made entirely of large rectangular light panels, and there was an assortment of hooks on the wall. There were no other items in the room. She didn't answer his question. "Both the paralytic and IV will take effect soon. Then we can begin." "What's the rush?" he asked. She smiled softly, locking eyes with him. "We're on a schedule." "How long have I been out?" "Oh, about 3 hours, maybe a bit longer." Lundgren noticed the first hint of emotion. Excitement? "Just long enough for me to drug you and get you here. I must commend you on your choice of location. Ganymede really has very little law enforcement." "Where's Adrian?" "I don't find this funny anymore. Adrian's busy, and you are right to not be amused." She chuckled. It was soft and deep. "Did you know I walked out of that bar with your body draped over my shoulder? I just got into my shuttle and no one said a word. We are on the far side of Ganymede right now, in an uncharted crater. If you wanted to scream, no one would hear you." Lundgren was not ready to accept what he was being told. "I call bullshit on that." He even managed a laugh. "There is no way you could have carried me out. Look at you." He gestured at her with his eyes only. The paralytic really did work fast. She just smiled. "You are understandably confused. I suppose I could clarify by getting to the point." She closed her eyes as if she genuinely considering how to continue. As she opened them, she looked him right in his eyes. "I understand all of Earth's troopers are educated on the interstellar murder hobo." "Yes." He didn't just know, he was obsessed. "What do you know?" she asked. "Detailed but concise, please." Like reporting to a superior officer, the information spilled from Lundgren. He felt almost eager. The IMH is generally considered to be a multi-generational serial killing syndicate that has been in operation for over 300 years. It was founded by a Vehestian smuggler from the sweep system named Kovai Nistrol, who hasn't been publicly cited in over 370 years. The MO and appearance of the killer has never changed in all that time, and we know that Nistrol was a questionable character. We suspect cloning. Considering the average Vehestian lives about 175 years, we think the torch has probably been passed 3 or 4 times. Lundgren paused and considered whether he should be feeling a little more frightened. There was certainly some anxiety, but it felt distant. He couldn't help but admit that she really had designed quite an effective little paralytic. The irony that his face remained unaffected, whilst the rest of him, both physically and emotionally, felt numb to all around him, hadn't escaped his notice. "Please continue," she instructed. Lundgren didn't know when he had surrendered the intimacy of eye contact. He simply found staring at a ceiling of lights more comfortable. She was on his right, calmly adjusting the bed, holding him prone to a 45-degree angle. Clearing his throat, he continued. "Thus far, we've confirmed 715 kills over 67 separate planetary systems right across the Milky Way galaxy. It is the only criminal case that has ever experienced galactic collaboration from all 89 systems recognized law enforcement agencies. The most astonishing fact is, other than the footage, we have literally no other clues or evidence to build a case with. "Is that all?" she asked quietly. He looked at her through the corners of his eyes. She was over by the water cylinder, attaching a long hose and shower nozzle to a valve on the side. "Well, there's a theory that all serial killers want to be caught, but the IMH has proven to be the exception. As I said, 0 sightings. There's never been a more successful criminal syndicate. And their motive? Ugh, vengeance. Is there anything pettier? There are several things actually, but continue." He chanced another look. She was adjusting something out of sight on top of the cylinder. The hose hung down the back of her left shoulder. "They find people they consider victims whom have been denied justice via official means and take revenge on their behalf, completely. No one is left to continue the cycle of vengeance." He expelled a sigh that sounded almost like a sob. "This will be cold," she said, and turned on the hose without giving him a moment to protest. The water was indeed cold, and he gasped audibly. The pressure was decent for a cylinder setup. Of course, he could only feel that as she blasted him right in the face. Looking down, he could see a clotted, foamy spiral at the bottom as water and vomit drained away to who knows where. She made sure to get as much off of him as possible, even scrubbing his face with a rough cloth. The cold shock was the final catalyst in restoring his clarity. As she shut the valve on the cylinder, the room suddenly became very familiar. He'd just never imagined it from a victim's point of view before. The water cylinder, 5 feet tall, should have been the first clue, but the wide-rigged medical bed, the stark white walls and various fixtures, this was the IMH's killing room. "Fuck," he said it with soft resignation, closing his eyes. "Alexei?" he asked, forcing himself to look at her. She simply smiled. "I suppose it's time things got interesting." She tilted her head, not breaking eye contact, and changed into a 9-foot artisan right in front of his eyes. Sporting a full complement of tusks, 4 arms, and thick, motley brown, leathery skin. With 2 enormous hands, she grabbed him by the chest, and with another, she deftly undid the restraints that held his wrists. He couldn't feel them. He simply observed their lifeless flap in his periphery. Careful not to disturb the IV and needle, she gently rested him forward, cradling him in 2 of her 4 hands. Hanging as though over a horse's rump, with his face facing towards the metal floor, he noticed rivets. With a free hand, she flipped the valve back on, and he felt the cold water blasting the back of his head. She made sure to get every last scrap of mucus, alcohol, and tiny chunks of stomach lining from his hair. He heard the telltale pattering of water blasting plastic as she cleaned the bed. Once done, she pinned him back against it and quickly lowered him into a horizontal position. She morphed back into her previous form. She wasn't young, but he couldn't fathom any sort of age in her either. She was certainly beautiful. She proceeded to gently tie his wrists back up above his head. It took the lock clunking loudly into place that brought him back to his senses, just enough to ask, "What are you?" "I am glad you asked." She wasn't looking at him, preoccupied with returning the cylinder and hose to their original places. "I am a changeling." "Impossible," he scoffed. "Possible," she challenged. "What did you just see?" As she spoke, she had moved over to the sonic hygiene basin and was fervently cleaning her arms and hands. The changelings from the Alpha Centauri system were all exterminated nearly 400 years ago. It was the only mass-sanctioned genocide, with a full vote from 89 out of 90 planetary systems. A vote held without our system, within which we lived peacefully among 3 other sentient spacefaring species. Most of them died with us, did you know? Only the fractions off-planet were spared. They are still trying to rebuild. Except for the changelings, who were all confirmed as being on-planet within the Alpha Centauri system at the time. How did you survive? I had been abducted by Vehestian smuggler from the sweep system prior to your destruction of our system. I must have been given up for dead when I didn't return during the summons. She closed her eyes briefly with a pause, then continued. I certainly felt the yearning to return. It was incredibly painful. To be called home on such an instinctive level, to then be unable to return due to my unlawful confinement. She took another pause, but made firm eye contact, compelling him to remain silent. It nearly killed me, and it should have. With the destruction of my home world, the cosmic link compelling us to return each Centauri century was severed. As such, I survived. Is that why you kill? It's just personal vengeance all along? He felt comfort in the scorn he was able to insert in his tone. She laughed softly. No, it's not even why I started killing. That honor rests with the smuggler who repeatedly raped me every night for 12 years, which was how long it took me to build immunity to his variety of custom sedatives, by the way. He was guilty of other crimes, but I digress. I slowly tortured him to death, probably 9 years after being severed from the link. Why do you kill then? He asked as she removed the Medi-strap and IV with ease, stowing it out of sight. The effects of the paralytic will wear off quickly. She continued without a pause. I kill because 5 years after I escaped my confinement, I found someone else denied justice, someone too pure and injured to take vengeance for themselves. I cared for him very much. That was over 367 years ago. The Vehestian smuggler, you use his face for all your killings, don't you? The fear welling in his chest felt like an ocean tide. There's no syndicate either. It's just been you all along? I do, and yes. She permitted a small pause to let that sink in then. I think it's time we got on with it. She walked over to the back wall and pressed gently against it. A small, previously imperceptible cabinet opened up. Inside was a camera link-up, a large red sledgehammer, and an assortment of torturing tools. She morphed into the Vehestian smuggler, now standing 6 feet tall. She pressed a small button on the side of the camera to start recording, sending the footage out to the whole system. Live. Do you understand why you are here? The smuggler's voice was deep, smooth, and seductive. He knew, and he saw now further point in wasting time. He was resigning himself to his fate. He knew his options, and opted for complete honesty. I shouldn't have won my case today. Correct, she affirmed. And do you recognize this? She held up a small rectangular drive, fitted with an illegal isolation port so the data contained cannot be detected, even when plugged into one of Earth's collection servers, which was basically all of them. Lundgren recognized it on an almost intimate level. Seeing it in her hands was like a violation. It's my diary, he replied, looking straight ahead of him. I suppose you want the encryption key? No, I'm good. I just wanted you and every single one of your accomplices to know I had this. You've all been very busy, with quite a variety of things. The paralytic had worn off completely, and Lundgren was very much aware of his body. The pain, discomfort, fear, and anxiety enveloped him like a landslide. He couldn't stop the tears singing his eyes, nor the sobbing noises of hyperventilation as panic consumed him. With a mighty crack, Fire exploded across his left cheek. She had hit him hard. First Trooper Lundgren Morrissey, Constabulary Grid 7H6 of Earth's Solar Militia. You have two choices. She never once looked at the camera. Her focus was on him and the task ahead. She continued, "You can confess, and I'll make it quick, or you can deny your crimes and face torture." First Trooper Morrissey, what do you choose? My case, he stuttered. Rutger V. Morrissey. I am guilty of the crime he accused me of. He confesses. He could hear the smile in her voice. What crime was that? What was it that 14-year-old Alexei Rutgar accused you of? I responded to a report of domestic abuse and neglect from a concerned neighbor. When I arrived on scene, Alexei had already been alone for 3 days, with neither food and nor money. His father was dead, and his mother appeared to have run off with another lover. He swallowed, not wanting to continue. You know how this works. Speak, or I will make you. I raped him, okay? He blurted out, and then we covered it up, like we always do. Correct, she said. Lundgren knew what was coming and started hyperventilating again. He didn't have to look. Lundgren Morrissey, by your own account, she said, holding the drive aloft. You have raped or somehow sexually assaulted over 37 people, 28 of them minors, the youngest of which was only 6. You will be the first of many, and you will watch it coming. Lundgren knew not to close his eyes for fear of having his eyelids torn off. The very last thing he saw before it all went dark was the rapidly descending head of an enormous red sledgehammer as it slammed into his face, kill the messenger. Sweetie, look, this was just delivered. It's from... My wife reads the card while unboxing the birthday present, peeling off red gift wrapping. Your Aunt Salome. That's nice. Wait, Aunt Salome? But... ... The red gift wrapping blooms into an orange fireball. The shockwave pushes me, shoves me, throws me hard into the wall. The screams from my wife's birthday party guests are muffled, as if I'm submerged in water deep below the surface. Aunt Salome. Only I know that she is not real. Aunt Salome is the code name for my dispatcher at Zarathustra. She is my sweet old sickly aunt who lives in a nursing home in rural middle of nowhere on the other side of the country, who sends cards for Christmas and birthdays, who has a Facebook account filled with photographs of her, an actress hired by Zarathustra, with me, her favorite nephew. And where she writes bot-generated old lady posts that periodically include a bat signal code phrase to activate me. Zarathustra thinks my marriage is an elaborate cover. They think I'm an unfeeling psychopath who built a facade of respectability by marrying a wholesome suburban everywoman, siring 2 adorably ordinary children. Zarathustra thinks it's all a front, and they're right. I am a psychopath. That's why I'm an effective tool for Zarathustra. I am unfeeling about my assignments. I'm rational, precise, calculating, manipulative, deceptive, effective. I don't make mistakes. I'm a machine, but they're wrong. My marriage is not a facade. It's real. It's the only real thing I have. It's not that I love my wife and my children. Love, like any emotion, is ultimately empty, easy to fake, meaningless. But my family is an extension of me. New limbs I've grown, like a salamander. New heads, like Hydra. If you hurt them, you hurt me. If you hurt me, I will hurt you. He's a slight man, narrow shoulders, thinning blonde hair, almost bald on top, wearing small round glasses with thick lenses. He's half my height, even in the Western boots with 3-inch heels. He walks with a strange gait, as if he is skipping. There's something jaunty about him. I follow him into the office building, staying far behind him since he knows me by sight. When he waves the key card to enter his office, I step up behind him and put the silenced gun barrel into the small of his back. "Hello again," I say. "You..." His eyes go wide behind the small glasses when I dig the barrel in a little harder. "How did you..." "Let's go!" Inside, it's a small office, but with a nice view of the skyline, well appointed with a large desk, an oversized leather executive chair, and 2 computer monitors on a credenza facing the windows. There's a fine layer of dust on the seat cushions of the 2 visitor chairs in front of the desk. No one comes to visit. "So," I say, "we meet again. You asked how I knew. Well, I remembered the photographer hired by Zarathustra who took the pictures of me with the elderly actress playing the part of Aunt Salome. That photographer was you. When I found out that old lady actress died from natural causes, just a week after that photo shoot. But you didn't. 2 and 2 make 4. You're part of Zarathustra." "I don't know what you mean." "Zarathustra? I assumed you were a flunky, but that you could lead me to the next rung on the ladder to get to my handler. But now that I see this place, clearly you are more than a flunky. I think you're Aunt Salome." "Aunt Dash, you're my handler. Sit down." He sits down behind the desk. I keep standing, gun pointed at him. "Why did you kill my wife?" "I didn't." Let me rephrase that. Why did you order the killing of my wife? "Please, I didn't..." It had all the markers of Zarathustra. In fact, it's the way I would have done it. "Wait, I can explain. Will you allow me?" He points, index finger over his shoulder, to the computer monitors. "I have a message pre-recorded for this specific situation. It's from the leader of Zarathustra." "The leader?" "Yes." "May I?" I nod. He swivels the office chair, turns his back to me, brings up web page, completely blank, except for a single open field and the text. "Enter password, Z9 asterisks." "What's the password?" "I don't know, but I've been told that you do." He lifts the wireless keyboard from the credenza tray, swivels, and slides the keyboard across the wide expanse of the desk. I shift the gun to my left hand, still pointing the barrel at him. "Yes, I do know a password that begins with Z9. The thing is, I'm the only one who does." I keep the gun trained on him as I key in the password. As soon as I enter the password, a video starts playing, and there he is, the leader of Zarathustra. My face. "Congratulations," says my face in the video. "The sacred game is at an end. The festivals of atonement are over. Since you're watching this video, you're ready for the next step. It's time to take out the middleman, kill the messenger." I shift my silenced gun back into my right hand, but I hesitate. "Go ahead," my face on the video says. "You don't need Aunt Salome anymore." A feather-light pressure on the trigger, a sound like a cough, a puff of smoke from the barrel, and there's a hole in the little man's forehead. His head snaps back, and he slumps over in the office chair. Aunt Salome is dead. The middleman is gone. The messenger has been killed. My face says, "Now it's just you. Only you. All you. As it always was. You decide, as you always did. Only now you know that it has always been you making the choices. What's your next assignment? Who's your next kill?" The screen goes blank. Outside the window, the skyline, the tall buildings full of people, murder at the Roadhouse Saloon. I dozed, peacefully drooling on the notes from my philosophy class when the phone began its merciless shriek. My heart stopped. Notes, pens, and phone scattered across the floor in my shocked and befuddled response. Groggy, I rifled through the refuse until the lighted face of the phone gleamed from under the bed. Grabbing it, I cursed the caller. The ID announced, Carol. Who the hell is Carol, and why is she calling at... I checked the time in the upper left corner of the phone. 4 p.m.? I rubbed the grit from my eyes and checked the ID again. Oh, that Carol. I wonder what she wants. Cousins and the only children of twin mothers and abusive fathers, we called whenever we needed support. Her father, murdered outside a saloon near the rail yard, and mine, a miserable drunk. We spent many hours commiserating about how we hated our families. Hey. Ed. Did I wake you? Number, I was reviewing my philosophy notes. You were asleep. Sorry, but I need to talk to you. She sounded agitated, upset. Okay. She'd gotten a call from some lawyer about the estate of our recluse Aunt Zoe. Estate? I didn't know the stingy old bag. No one did. Why you? Why not one of her sisters? They hate each other as much as they hate Aunt Zoe. Zoe was the elder of the three, and they hadn't spoken to each other in years. The lawyer said Aunt Zoe named me as executor of her will. Wow! I drilled my left eye with the knuckle of my index finger. Did you know her? Jerk. What a stupid question. Yeah, sure, we're best friends. No. Sorry, I'm not awake yet. How can I help? Thanks. I knew I could depend on you. I chuckled. I'm all you've got. You don't know the half of it. So the lawyer told me she has a storage unit with all her belongings, and we need to sort through them. Oh God. Was she a hoarder? I can see it now, digging through mounds of useless crap, rat dung and spoiled food. Better get us some hazmat suits. Carol barked a sudden laugh. You watch too much TV. Not with the classes I'm taking, just an overactive imagination from being sequestered in this room. Well, here's your break. Can you meet me out at the U-Haul on Tate Street Saturday, say, about 10 a.m.? That's awfully early. You can handle it. I want to get through this quickly. I'll treat you to lunch. I'll be there. Saturday, 10 a.m. I set the phone down and sat cross-legged on the bed, rubbing my eyes. Although neither of us lived at home, our weird, dysfunctional family dynamics haunted us at every turn. 3 sisters who hated each other and seldom spoke. The older sister, Zoe, a recluse, and the others are trapped in undesirable situations. My parents hated each other and should have divorced years ago, but couldn't figure out how. Carol's father dead, and the killer still unknown. Her mother was angry at everyone and everything, but unable to figure out why. We had temporary hope and happiness when we connected. Zoe, I'd never met her. I'd heard she was caustic and could squeeze a nickel until it squealed. Saturday rolled around and I overslept my alarm. After wolfing down some toast, I grabbed 2 lattes from Starbucks and parked outside the storage unit. Relieved that I didn't see her car, I slumped back in the seat. One of the building's hallway doors opened, and Carol sauntered up to the driver's window. I opened it about an inch. Oversleep? Number, I'm 5 minutes early. I got here 15 minutes ago. You're late. Cut me some slack. I got you a latte. Oh, how sweet. I wish you were my brother. Am I forgiven, even though my clock said I was early? Yeah, let's get this done. Thanks for coming. You know I meant it when I said, I'm all you've got. Yeah, I thought of that too. She sipped her latte, muttering, so strange. And they're sisters. Well, let's do this. She held up the pinky finger of her left hand as I got out of the car. Together? What? We're back in grade school. Come on, best friends, secret pact. She waved her pinky. I hooked hers with my left pinky. Always. Our secret pact, as unique as the port wine-colored birthmarks tracing the length of our joined fingers, a sign we told all our classmates that made us special with secret powers, and when joined together, unbeatable. A stupid kids game that became our trademark and kept us close. I followed Carol down a long hall of articulated doors. She stopped at one of the middle units, pulling a key from her pocket and stuck it in the padlock. It still bothers me, I mused. She held the lock but didn't turn the key. What? Why would someone you never knew make you executor of her will? She grinned. My reaction to sorting through the old bag's hoard was bad, but you should have heard Mom's. She gave the lawyer hell and hung up on him. How'd your mom react? I gave my shoulders a lift and squeezed my face with an exaggerated frown. Beats the hell out of me. If you hadn't told me, I wouldn't have known. She pinched her lips together and shook her head. Family dynamics. She must have really been pissed at our mothers. The padlock snapped open. Ah, you ready for the big reveal? Open sesame. The door rolled up. We stood there with our mouths open. You're kidding? Carol shifted to one foot, tapped the toe of the other, and curled her fists against her hips. Every exhale snapped from her lips with a soft puff. I cracked up. You certainly needed help. We stood in the doorway of the mid-sized locker, me snickering and Carol puffing, and stared at two steamer trunks standing on end in the middle of the otherwise empty unit. No hoard, no clutter, nothing but those two steamer trunks. Carol glanced at me from the corner of her eye and told me to shut up. Then she patted her hands together. Well, you take one trunk, and I'll take the other, and we'll get out of here in half the time. Whatever floats your boat. We still on for lunch? You and your appetite. And with that, we strolled up to the trunks and opened them. Years of memories spilled out in a flood of photos and letters and toys. We stood there in stunned silence. What is this? The overwhelming sight numbed me. How do we sort this out? Where do we begin? Well, I dropped to my knees. I guess we start digging. Carol nodded blankly and followed my lead. Together, we sifted through the life of this discarded person, someone we knew nothing about, awed at what we touched, held, and read. Out of this confused detritus of an enigma's life blossomed a persona of love and caring that eluded everyone who thought they knew her. In this kaleidoscope of wonder, we buried ourselves until I stretched and glanced at my watch. God almighty, we've been sitting here for almost 6 hours. It's 2:45. Carol sat back and crossed her legs, holding what appeared to be a letter. Hey. Her voice broke, and large tears began to roll down her face. You gotta read this. She held it out to me. The paper shook in her hand. A large knot twisted in my stomach. For an instant, I stared at her swaying hand. I didn't want to read whatever was written on that page, but an urge somewhere deep inside forced me to take it. At first, I only saw Carol's eyes and the strange, frightening focus they held. But then the words, written in a graceful script, sucked the breath from my lungs and left me gasping. My hand flopped in my lap, my arm weakened by the weight of the message. I stared at the trunk's latch, gathering my thoughts and fighting to still my pounding heart. I turned to Carol as a new wave of tears crested in her eyes. You're my sister. She answered with a rapid nod and hid her quivering lips behind her hands. My God, but why? How? I waved my hand toward the contents of the open trunk. I think this is starting to make sense. I pushed aside the clutter, digging toward the bottom corner, and stopped. I pulled out a birth certificate, mine, and held it up with 2 fingers like it was radioactive. She held a similar one up to me. The certificates list Zoe as our mother, but no father. Deflating thoughts of illegitimacy flooded my mind, stopped by Carol's words. "Read the second page of the letter," she said, her voice thinning. Bile-laced fear lashed the back of my throat, but the sour taste receded, overwhelmed by my need to know. The muscles in my throat swelled. I couldn't read the words for the blurring in my eyes. Blinking, a wet saltiness spilled into my mouth. I looked at Carol, my fading words pushed across my lips in wisps. He raped her. Twice! The bastard raped her twice! Carol threw her arms around my neck. "I'm glad the son of a bitch is dead. I could kiss whoever killed him." We relished the comfort of each other's arms, and finally withdrew, sitting back and inhaling languid breaths, drained of emotion and strength. I wiped my face with my shirt sleeve and gazed at Carol. "Well," I chuckled. "Sis, what now?" She leaned her head back and took a deep breath, puffing out her cheeks and blowing the air toward the ceiling. Then her head slumped against her chest. "I don't know. Bro." The metal walls of the unit rattled with shrieks of laughter. I slanted my head toward her. "But, I mean, he was your... Sorry. I mean, our father raped our mother." "Well, until now we knew him as my father." She chuckled. "What a fucking shock. But, I mean, did our mothers know? Is that why we ended up with her surrogate twin sisters?" "I don't know, and to tell you the truth, I don't care. I've wondered why I never felt a connection to my parents. Now I know. They aren't my parents. Shit. Here's the clincher." I pulled a photo of Zoe from the pile. She must have been around 20. I handed it to Carol. She was quite a knockout. No wonder your dad couldn't keep his hands off her. Take a look at her pinky." Carol brought the photo closer, then studied her own pinky, and then mine. Same birthmark. A dark sadness pained me, and my eyes blurred. Carol brushed a tear from my cheek. "I know what you're thinking. I would have liked to have known her, too." We wrapped our arms around each other and pulled each other close like the lost brother and sister we were. I kissed her cheek. "Thanks, sis. I needed that." "Uh-huh." She took the letter and reread the second page. "What did you make of this last paragraph?" I didn't get that far. She handed it back and I read it a half-dozen times. "Remove the tape from the anchor." I glanced at the trunks and the piles surrounding us. "I don't know. These trunks must be 100 years old. I don't have a dot." I stopped, staring at the interior of my trunk, then Carol's. Scenes of the early 1900s decorated the interior linings. Famous destinations adorned the lining of her trunk, and famous cruise liners adorned mine. Wait a minute. I emptied my trunk and scrutinized the lining. The Titanic sat at anchor in one corner. I shined the light from my phone, and a 5 or 6 inch piece of clear tape, starting at the Titanic's anchor chain, gleamed. I pulled the tape, revealing a tear in the fabric behind it. As I peeled the fabric back, Carol squeezed closer, peering over my shoulder. I heard her breath stop. Beneath the fabric was a thin brown envelope and another photo. I glanced up at her. "More surprises?" "Let's see 'em, damn it." I pulled the photo out. Carol gasped. This was taken at the roadhouse where my dad was murdered. I brought the photo closer and squinted at the two figures at the bar. Shit. Those two at the bar are our dads. Yeah, and by the looks, yours is about to punch mine. He really looks pissed. I flipped it over. It's dated. Carol snatched the photo from my hand and choked a soft gulp. Jesus, that's the night he was killed. I'm sure my face reflected her look of confusion. Like, is it possible? Did my dad murder yours? She tilted her head and squeezed the tip of her tongue between her lips. She must have read my mind. It's possible. But why? She murmured. I gave her a half-hearted shrug. I don't know. Jealousy? I sensed my eyes suddenly widening as the idea sunk in. Crap. Were they fighting over Zoe? Did my dad have designs on her too? Only one way to find out. Ask him. Carol jumped to her feet, but I grabbed her arm before she could leave. Wait. I held up the brown envelope. We haven't opened this yet. She knelt as I tore the envelope's flap and removed 2 sheets of paper. I don't think we need to ask. I waved one in front of her nose. This is a sworn deposition. Carol took it and read it. Everything we need to know is there. How your dad raped her and threatened her, and that my dad didn't kill him. I don't understand. Why did she wait? Why didn't she go to the police? Who knows? She's gone. I rubbed the stubble on my cheek. But I have a theory. What? Revenge. You're kidding. I shook my head. A warm flood of satisfaction swept over me. Nope. He was always a suspect, and she knew he was in a miserable marriage. Hell, I was there. I saw it. Obviously, he didn't know she knew. Whatever it was she knew. But then, maybe she got more satisfaction out of watching him wallow in his own personal hell, drinking his life away, broke, living with a woman who hated him. I know Mom wouldn't leave him because she wanted him to be miserable. Maybe she knew too. He wouldn't get a divorce because all sorts of shit would come out about him. Wow, you gotta be angry to wait that long. Holy crap. My mouth dropped. What? I held up the second sheet. This is her will. Carol sat up. Did you know she was married? She shook her head. 35 years. Her husband died 6 years ago, which explains your choice as executor, I guess. Well, what's in the will? My saliva turned to sand. I shoved the paper toward her. The more she read, the wider her eyes became. She slapped the palm of her hand over her mouth. Is that a $sign with 5 zeros behind it? My head bowed toward her in 2 quick, stunned nods. Carol broke into a hysterical laugh. She left everything to us. Where did she get it? Who cares? If that ain't revenge. I turned a sober look her way. What now? It took her a long moment to contain her laughter. Then it sank in. Get a lawyer? That's a good start. I clasped my hands around hers. We've learned a lot today. Good things about you and me. I just hope her will, what she gave us, won't come between us. She smiled. Never. Let's talk options with the lawyer and... She surveilled the residue of Zoe's secret life. Come back and clean this up later. I don't think I can handle any more revelations. No truer words were spoken. How about pizza and a pitcher of beer? I'm ready. She pulled the padlock key from her pocket. I'll lock up and meet you outside. Oh. I stopped and picked up a small envelope and handed it to her. This was clipped to the back of the will. It's addressed to you. Me? She turned it over in her hand. Take your time. I'll wait outside. Carol rolled the door closed and locked the padlock. She put the key in her pocket, opened the envelope, and removed a photo. Her breath hung in her throat. She dropped it like it burned her fingers and stumbled toward the exit, but then turned, ran back, and snatched it from the floor. She stared at it, mumbling, "That's me, at the roadhouse." She shot quick glances up and down the hallway and collapsed against the wall, rubbing the back of her hand across her lips. Closing her eyes for a moment, she rolled her head from side to side and then read the notations on the back of the photo. Dated the night her father died, the sweat ran down her neck in rivulets and her flesh turned cold. Below the date, 8 words, penned in Zoe's graceful script, closed the door to her enigmatic life. "I know you killed him. He deserved it. Marie Antoinette." Squat, beige and Soviet, the Marie Antoinette apartments stood against the stale gray Minneapolis sky. Irony of the worst kind, he thought, blandly ugly and unconscious. He would take exquisitely self-aware irony any day over this 3-story architectural monstrosity, classed up with tacked-on Ionic Greek columns, harsh blue LED Christmas lights wrapped inexpertly around them, canned Christmas classics pumping through the air. God, this place was only better than minimum security prison by a hair. But it was all he could afford now, so he'd just have to lower his eyes and his standards every time he approached. He tried to avoid the other people in the building, but a few of the near indigent souls, especially the family across the hall, insisted on pestering him with their lowbrow holiday cheer, the cheap gift of homemade cookies, the invitation of a seat at their dinner table on Christmas night on the flip side of a child's crude drawing of a Christmas tree slipped under his door. All this might have been more bearable if anyone he knew now understood why the Marie Antoinette apartments pained his soul, filled him with righteous rage. He'd certainly never get that from his obtuse, court-appointed therapist, a small, garish woman whose office and clothing reeked of TJ Maxx. So, he amused himself by using up their 50 minutes, complaining about how much he hated living there. His fingers itched to blow the place up, her told her, to set it alight. She told him there were healthier ways to channel and examine his negative emotions, so he could eventually let them go. He needed to think about what the Marie Antoinette represented to him, she told him, to look deeper, and to perhaps think about its positive attributes instead. This made him laugh hysterically. How much deeper can I go than living inside the damned building? Should I dive into the meaning of my laminate, faux wood floors and Formica kitchen counters, the rancid smell of old cooking that oozes from the graying, cracked walls studded with nail holes and abandoned archaeological remnants of tape from all the miserable souls who inhabited the purgatory before me? How about the rust-stained, leaking toilet and body oil-marked tub? Should I look for Rorschachs in its grimy patterns? That's not what I meant, she said quietly. And you know it. Well, I cherish my negative emotions, he said, suddenly tired. They're the only things keeping me going these days. Till near morning, a couple of weeks before Christmas, after one too many sleeping pills, he had a vivid dream. It started out of focus as he dragged himself toward the Marie Antoinette, bearing his usual cloak of heavy gray resignation, and pushed hard against the main door, as he always had to. Only this time, the door sprang open, and instead of jarring, cold Christmas music, warm strains of exquisite chamber music vibrated through him. All came into focus. The entryway had grown to twice its size, the gray, nondescript industrial carpet replaced with a glowing mahogany parquet floor. Instead of aluminum mailboxes and a frameless wall mirror on either side of the narrow space, Giant gilt mirrors reflecting golden candlelight and gold and cream fleur-de-lis silk wallpaper covered the walls. The walls heaved outward until the room became what it wanted to be, a grand palace ballroom, complete with gently tinkling, candle-lit chandeliers. A ballroom for him alone. The effect was ostentatious, but stunning, the way his ex-wife had decorated their homes in the city, on the island, at the lake, near the slopes, their homes for every preposition, all gone now. He dream-prayed he had died and gone to heaven, but he awoke to the same ordinary life, the drab apartment, a shift at the same greasy job, and another boring session after it with his therapist, the only person he ever said more to than, "Can I take your order, would you like fries with that?" A woman he would have sneered at, if not ignored, in his old life, and would again someday when his luck turned. Would he tell her about his dream? He decided he would. It seemed safe enough, wasn't about the past, the present, or even the future. It was just a dream. But was it? As his workday dragged on, the customers who filed into the restaurant looked at him, smiling with something more, it seemed to him, than mere pre-Christmas cheer. He began to wonder if the dream wasn't a message. Maybe his luck was about to turn. He'd paid his dues after all. That old feeling began to tingle again. By the time his 4 o'clock appointment with TJ, as he'd taken to calling her, even to her face, arrived, he'd decided he must keep the dream to himself until he knew more. He had to get through the session, get home, eat a little something, and take his sleeping pills. "You seem distracted today," TJ said late in the hour. "Something happened this week?" Same old, same crappy job, same crappy apartment." He shifted his gaze to the pressed board, "Believe" plaque near the window before she could read him, but she was astute, this small, tacky woman. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw her cock her head. "You're not complaining like you usually do. Did something change?" "Like I said, nope. Maybe I've adjusted to living in a shithole, I don't know." He attempted to give her an aw shucks grin, but felt his face contorting in weird ways, so he scrambled to throw her a bone. "Have I told you about my neighbors across the way?" He leaned back and sneered, coming up with an awful lie. "I'd swear to God she's killing him sometimes, and man, I wish she'd succeed so I can get some rest." "What do you think it means, Doc, that I don't care if he dies?" TJ sighed and drummed her red fingernails on her thigh. "It's Clauso 450, she said. "Let's just pick this up next week." Tilda. The dream started the same as before. Heavy quotidian dread as he approached the stunted building, growing excitement and wonder as it opened to a Versailles-like hall of mirrors. But this time, the hall was filled with people, giant people. People twice his height, in silken 18th century finery, swirling and spinning around the room, wind-up dolls in white wigs with faces he recognized. His old clients, wealthy people he'd cheated and stolen from for years, people he'd fooled into being his friends, people from the life he wanted back desperately. He tried to speak, to get their attention, but nothing came, not even air. As he watched, the dancers grew larger. Wait, no, he grew smaller. He was shrinking, becoming more and more insignificant. An insect, a speck, dirt. He would always be dirt. Tilda. He stumbled through the rest of the week, his nights vast and dreamless. TJ seemed surprised to see him in the waiting room early but said nothing. He sat on her couch, cleared his throat. "I had this dream," he said, "that my building became a palace, but one I will never have access to again." His voice shook. She handed him the tissue box. "Yes, He gave her a brief description of the dream. "What do you think it means?" she asked. "Isn't that your job?" "No," she said simply, and crossed her arms, waiting. "I guess. I don't think I'll ever again have the life I had before." "I don't think," he said, swallowed. "I deserve it." "No," she said again, not clarifying what she meant, which oddly made him feel more respect for her. "So, what now?" "That's up to you." "Well, a hint might be nice," he whispered, wanting to scream. He swallowed. "You are my damn therapist after all." "Okay. What do you miss most about your old life?" "Not from in here." She tapped her head. "Not ego. From here." She tapped her chest. "Heart. What do you really miss?" He shook his head. "I don't know. Without those things on the table, nothing. I mean, I don't have kids. My ex-wife was a money-grubbing bitch, and my friends... Shit, I didn't really have those. Maybe luck. But that's not what you mean either. I know what you're getting at, but you're barking up the wrong tree." She smiled, the first full smile he'd seen from her since they'd met, before she'd gotten to know him. "I don't think so. I think you're getting somewhere. Maybe your dream was telling you more than you think. Like I've said before, dig deeper, go further. The answers are there, inside that building and inside you." He choked back a snarky, "Whatever, Obi-Wan," and nodded at her. Glancing at the clock above the door, he stood, smoothing his sweaty palms against his jeans. "Hold on." She held up a finger and smiled again. "I have something for you." He stared, not comprehending. She turned to fish something out of a paper bag, then turned back, holding out a flat package wrapped in green tissue paper and red curly ribbon. Of course, Christmas was only 4 days away. He stammered, cheeks reddening. "I didn't get you anything." He didn't know why he was embarrassed, which only made him blush harder. She laughed. "I was not expecting you to. Don't worry about it, it's no big deal." "Merry Christmas." "Merry, yeah," he said, looking down at his name. Jed, in black marker on the paper, an inexpertly drawn holly leaf and berries below it. A feeling spread, not altogether unpleasant, replacing ungenerous thoughts about the cheesy gift she'd likely procured at TJ Maxx. "Thank you, Geraldine," he mumbled and bumbled out the door. Tilda. He worked Christmas Eve day, took the bus, and trudged home as the sun set again too early, the day again too short, carrying his fast food dinner and the bottle of California Pinot Noir he'd splurged on. It was only 4, but it felt like midnight, and his near-unfurnished apartment felt more featureless and tired and depressing than prison ever had been. Because it was his choice to leave it so, he realized. He had nowhere else to go, so he busied himself with eating and drinking, the food cold and congealed, and the wine's mediocrity disappointing. Folding up the empty, redolent burger paper and fries box, he glanced at the present Geraldine had given him, still unopened on the kitchen counter. He wasn't sure whether he'd saved it because it was his only gift, or because he didn't really care about it. Either way, he might as well open it now. He washed his greasy hands in the kitchen sink and poured another glass of wine. He picked up the gift and carefully untied the red ribbon, did his best not to tear the green paper as he picked at the tape, then slid the paper away. Not a tacky nothing after all, but a green, leather-bound book, like the ones his ex-wife had bought by the shelf-load from antiquaries to decorate their homes, curated for color and size rather than content. But this wasn't inert decoration. It was chosen for him to read. He snorted. Crime and punishment. He knew the gist of the story, though he suspected he'd have to read it to get the nuances she intended. Funny, he found himself looking forward to it. His doorbell rang. book in hand, still smiling with surprised respect for Geraldine. He answered the door to find the frazzled woman from across the hall. "Hi, Jeb, right?" Her grin was crooked, a little shy, infectious. He nodded, and she said, "Marissa, you never responded to our invite to dinner for tomorrow evening. Can you make it? We'd be glad to have you. We're making turkey with all the fixings. A couple other neighbors are coming." He considered this only a moment, tasting the oily coating of his pitiful dinner as he licked his lips. "You know what? Yes, Marissa. I'd be honored. Can I bring anything? Just yourself." She grinned again. 6 o'clock sharp, if that's okay, because of the Munchkins' early bedtime. "Sure," he said, finding himself grinning in response. 6. Great. She glanced at his book, then inside the doorway at his near-bare apartment. "Looks like a bookshelf is in order, huh? Maybe even a sofa." She laughed. He couldn't help but laugh with her. "Yes," he said. "It's time." Again, that soft, warm lightness pushing out something hard and heavy he hadn't even known was there. What was it? Only later, while lying on his second-hand mattress on the floor, after he'd read the long first part of the leather-bound book about young, impoverished Raskolnikov scheming and rationalizing his decision to murder a pawnbroker for her money, did it come to him. Like Raskolnikov, he'd lost something along the way, something essential and tender that had shriveled to a hard stone inside him once he began to drip Ponzi scheme money. Something poor little rich girl Marie Antoinette likely never knew her entire tragic, gold-plated life. That night he dreamt again, a simple dream. The Marie Antoinette apartments remained an ugly pedestrian building, but he entered with lightness, that warmth down to his bones. He greeted neighbors in the lobby by name, delivered groceries to the housebound old lady down the hall, went into his simply but warmly furnished apartment to make himself a nourishing meal. Christmas morning, he leapt out of bed. If he was lucky, he might find gifts for the children across the hall before noon. Bloodlust. I was going to kill a man tonight. That's why I went to the party. It was an extravagant black tie affair thrown on a warm, late summer evening at the end of July, hosted by none other than Walter Adler, the richest man in town. Midnight was approaching, and with it, my deadline. I dressed the part, wearing a maroon dress with a corset torso and a slit up the thigh. My makeup was reminiscent of the famous women in 1950s-era America. I was, as they say, dressed to kill. This particular estate had been blessed with a ballroom perfect for gatherings such as these. I was on the second floor of the Galant mansion, leaning over the rail of a balcony overhanging a bar in the center of the house. I was at my perch, an elegant nighthawk waiting for my prey. I surveyed the scene when a beguiling young man leaning against the bar caught my eye. He was an eye-catcher, that's for sure. It wasn't the extravagant, attention-seeking purple suit jacket unbuttoned on his chest that caught my eye, nor was it the loose black tie around his neck, the slicked-back umber-brown hair, or the toothpick used as a substitute for some form of nicotine between his teeth. It was the bloody knuckles, the immature carmine scar along his left arm, and the vague outline of a tattoo of a scorpion stinger barely visible along the back of his neckline. That's when I knew he was the one. He was described in his profile almost identically to how he appeared. His demeanor confirmed what we knew of his personality, that he was egomaniacal, vainglorious, but unfortunately charismatic, and believes himself to be philanthropic. He was ingenious, devilishly handsome, and beyond intriguing. Surely only he could be the target I was assigned. It was such a shame I was going to have to kill him. There are plenty of ways to murder someone without any comprehension of observation on their part. In order to properly take the life of someone as smart as this particular gentleman, the key is to get him to notice the oddities engraved in your actions while providing enough of a distraction that he chalks it up to a beautiful dame's unfortunate personality. This man was no half-wit, but he was young, attractive, and vain. So I deduced that an old-fashioned plan of seduction would work out beautifully, for me at least. I turned around and sauntered gallantly through the crowd of laughing and smiling wealthy people, all pretending to have not a care in the world. If their lives were really that easy, I'd be out of a job. I demanded my presence to be conceded to subtly and silently, as I smiled politely at those I walked past, muttering a few phrases of pardon along the way, all the while never taking my eyes off this mysterious, charming stranger. I made my way down the mahogany staircase and along the edge of the room absolutely packed with dancers. I managed to spot the bar at the very end of the room and strolled innocently towards it. I sat in the bar stool next to him, the curious stranger that had become my prey, and waited like a vampire in a doorway for just a few seconds before making direct eye contact. From this distance, he was even more of an engrossing sight. He had dark scruff resembling a goatee on his chin, perhaps a dozen small white scars along his hands, arms, and even one on his forehead, and he smelled vaguely of fire whiskey. Most of all, there was an impossible-to-miss look of a tormented wild beast hiding deep inside his eyes. After making it clear I was sizing him up, I gazed at his unbuttoned jacket and smiled. He started to look me up and down in response before smiling softly and shifting his body to face me while still charismatically leaning against the bar. He thought he was at the advantage point. Little did he know he was walking right into my trap. He was playing along beautifully, yet stupidly all at once. I had no time to waste. I reached out towards him, offering my hand while gazing playfully up into his tortured eyes. I asked delicately, "Care to dance?" He grinned while grabbing my hand and slipping me off of the stool. "What's the name, Toots?" I stepped closer to him, so we were breathing the same air. I became acutely aware of the fact that he was at least 5 inches taller than I was. "Does it matter what my name is, as long as we both have a good time?" He chuckled and grabbed me by the waist while leading me out onto the dance floor. "Fair enough, princess." I was guided by the small of my back to the center of the dance floor as a romantic song began to play. This unfortunate target of mine was a phenomenal dancer, pulling me close, then pushing me away, spinning me around, and then even going so far as to dip me downwards as he gazed into my eyes in a tease. Then he'd stand me on my feet and dance with me normally as if he hadn't just nearly, almost, kissed me, coming close, but not close enough. Worst of all, he had made me want it, which was a curse so unforgivable I could hardly stand it. Dancing with him felt like heaven, which distracted me more than I'd ever like to admit. I wanted him when he was the last thing I should be wanting. I was on a mission. I don't feel things. I've never felt things, and I wasn't going to start now. But with him, I was a spider lily, blossoming in the moonlight. If only I had any clue what was really blooming that night. Perhaps I would have done things differently. If that were the case, maybe I wouldn't be dead. He spun me around, gracefully twirling me through a doorway into an empty library, away from the noise of the party. A nice, secluded area where no one could see us. We stopped our dance, and he smiled. "You're a good dancer." I beamed and glanced up at him. "You're not bad yourself." I put a hand on his chest, bit my lip teasingly as I stared into his dark, menacing eyes. Would you like to go get some air? He chuckled in response, and I pulled back away from him. Laughter was not the correct reaction. He was straying from my plan. With a smirk, he replied, "How forward of you, baby doll. We've truly been having such a delightful time. I regret to inform you, I'm going to have to kill you." He pulled me closer again by the waist, refusing to let me escape. I furrowed my brows and scowled. The audacity. Who does this insolent, sorry excuse of an enemy mafia's champion think he is? It was my job to kill him, not the other way around. I was going to damn well make sure he knew that. I grabbed him by the tie and pulled downward, forcing him to drop to my eye level. Watch it, teddy bear. I saw my target first and I never miss. Bold of you to assume you didn't catch my eye as soon as you walked into the room. He squeezed my waist, spun me around, and pulled me backwards so my back was flush against him, and whispered in my ear from over my shoulder, "Your organization is corrupt. You won't see us coming. The scorpions will strike to kill before you can blink. You're just one of many targets, darling. Don't flatter yourself by thinking you're anything special." His failed attempt at hurting my ego was adorable. I spun back around to face him and wrapped my hands together behind his neck. "You assume I'm one of them. You're either one of them or they started hiring harlots to do their dirty work." I rolled my eyes and scoffed, but he wasn't wrong. He simply saw through my plan. I grabbed his waist, taking my turn to pull him close and whisper in his ear, "You're handsome, but I'm afraid that's where the charm ends, dear. I'll be the one doing the killing tonight." With that, I unsheathed my dagger through the slit in my dress and held it up to his throat. I tried to slit it, but he held his arm up just in time and was barely preventing me from doing so. He used his legs to kick me in the stomach, and I kneeled over, allowing him to grab the dagger and pin me against the wall from behind. "You're enamoring, glamorous, and clever. I'll give you that. What you lack is the ability to anticipate someone just as enticing, charming, and intelligent as you working for the other side." I found his accusations laughable. With a chuckle and condescending smile, I retorted, "Once again, you're full of assumptions. I'm harder to read than you think. Also, how bold of you to think even for a moment we're anything alike. You'll never be as good as me. After all, I would have killed you by now if I was in your position." He grabbed my wrists, pinning them behind my back, and he dug the blade a centimeter into the back of my neck. I felt the cool rush of fresh blood trickle down and along my spine. "As good as you are at what, darling? This strange little game we play, juggling puppets and puppet masters, doing as we're told with no question under these false assumptions that we are making a name for ourselves, doing something praiseworthy, boosting our egos with the blood of our enemies. If we're playing this game, you have to lose to win. You and I are both losers, love." I used my entire body weight to shove into him with my torso, knocking the dagger out of his hands. "Would you quit with all of the nicknames?" I screamed as he twisted my wrists and pushed me harder against the wall in an attempt at pinning me. He started to breathe heavily in the struggle, but managed to say, "I would, if you'd give me your name." I kicked him hard over and over in an attempt to get him off of me. I practically screamed in frustration. "Ha, fair enough." He pulled us both backwards in a quick, jarring motion, shoved me to the floor as he let go of my wrists, brilliantly giving himself a few seconds of an advantage to bolt for the nearest open window overlooking the evening city lights. I propelled myself against the floor and jumped to my feet, turning to face him, still standing in the window. I didn't bother chasing after him. If he was going to jump out the window, pushing him, wouldn't do him any harm, and it was too late to stop him at this point. So, I ran my hands through my hair and smiled. You could always still join me, you know. In a moment, he turned to face the fight-stained room. He smirked as he gazed at me with those haunted, gorgeous eyes. Sorry, sweetheart, but I'm not interested in your sorry excuse of a mafia. You're nothing but a cult of bastards worshipping Miss Scarlet LaRue. And believe me, she isn't worth the hustle. Until next time, save a dance for me, darling. With that, he fell backwards out the window. For the love of murder. The wine glass shattered, and instantly conversations at the table came to a halt. There wasn't even a dull whisper to be heard, the silence utterly shocking. Nervous eye contact was made between the group until their attention was drawn elsewhere. His body was convulsing as foam began to form at the edge of his lips. The shock in his eyes left unchanged, while the pigment of his face turned from white to red, and then horrifically blue. "Somebody do something!" his wife shouted, gripping her husband's shoulders, then ravenously ripping at his shirt collar. The silence then broke, not into conversation, but the sounds of clattering utensils and chairs being pushed aside. Two gentlemen rushed to the convulsing man and lowered him from his chair to the ground. The convulsing began to slow then, until it came to a stop, as did his breathing, as well as his heart. One of the gentlemen placed two delicate fingers on the side of the old man's neck, let out a long sigh and shook his head in remorse. His wife began to sob. Angelina sat motionless across from her father as he struggled to breathe, without even realizing what was happening. Is this one of his cruel jokes? Some way to make the night memorable in his own cynical way. Just hours ago, Angelina and her father were dancing together, him in a three-piece suit, her in her wedding dress. Now he lays lifeless on the floor, blue in the face. Andrew is gathered with the other men. They whisper silently together, most likely deliberating on what to do with the body. Julia, her stepmother, lays upon her father's dead chest and heaves enough breath for them both. Angelina is still. She feels the hammering in her chest, the heat rising the nape of her neck. She is processing what is going on around her, on high alert. She doesn't have the capacity to be hysterical right now. Hysterics won't allow her to justify what has just happened before her very eyes. Her father was murdered. As the men gather in the corner, Angelina clears her throat. Every muscle in the room stops and turns in her direction. Andrew, do be a dear and gather Julia, please. She needn't be so hysterical considering she poisoned my father and her husband. Angelina said, so poised, as her chest break out into hives. Julia leaps upwards, crashing into the table and rattling the china. Her cheeks are streaked with thick black lines as she begins to scream. She lunges across the table where Angelina is sitting, forcing the gentlemen to leave their huddle and offer their assistance with subduing the events that are about to unfold. Angelina sits unscathed. You wretched brat! How dare you say those words and accuse me of such? I will not stand for this in my house, you unworthy fool. Julia's claims come in short stabs as she continues to struggle against the gentleman holding her back. Andrew's father, Leroy, attempts to calm the situation. Now, let us all take a breath. There is no need to point fingers or make such accusations. We do not know what happened, he says. With all due respect, Mr. Montgomery, my father was brutally murdered in front of my very own eyes, in his very own home, and the very day that was supposed to be my happiest, hisses Angelina. We shan't let anyone leave until they either confess or until we can bring the authorities in to decide for themselves. I, for one, know Julia has been pressuring Father to update his will to denounce me as full beneficiary of his estate since Andrew and mine's engagement. Angelina is wild-eyed now. Her stoic demeanor during the events has dissolved into utter rage. Andrew makes his way to her side. Julia is being restrained by Andrew's brother and father. Her sobs have evolved into a low growl, wolf-like, ready to plunge for Angelina's neck. This is obviously a horrific event, one that cannot be rectified. As my wife is saying, I don't believe this to be pure coincidence or even an accident at that. We were all drinking the wine tonight, were we not? Andrew asks. The remaining guests look amongst each other and nod simultaneously. And yet none of us are exhibiting the effects that overcame Mr. Lawrence. Poison is not out of the question. Father, please alert the staff of what has happened. See to it they promptly head to town to alert the authorities of this situation. As for everyone else, please meet in the main room. We will gather there until further instruction. Andrew guides Angelina out of the dining area, away from her dead father lying on the floor just feet away. Julia couldn't have done this, he whispers so delicately into her ear. She doesn't have the brains to go about navigating poison. She'd end up dead herself before she pulled anything like this off. Angelina scoffs and whispers back, this is true, if she were working alone. In the main room, the 5 dinner guests gather. Leroy enters shortly after, out of breath, notifying the group that the stable hand has taken upon himself to ride to town to alert authorities. Henry, Andrew's brother, works to start a fire. Julia, with her now untamed hair and cranberry sauce-stained dress, finds a chair in the corner and begins to sob, less hysterically this time. Angelina and Andrew take to the main couch. Elizabeth, Angelina's cousin, rushes to sit beside her. What is going on? She whispers urgently to Angelina and Andrew. Their heads all bow together to keep their conversation low. You don't really think he was poisoned, do you? That can't be. There's no way anyone would do such a thing, let alone to your father of all people. And tonight? Elizabeth is trying to rationalize the events that transpired not even 25 minutes ago. A large part of her is feeling guilty for occupying most of her dinner conversation with Henry. How could she not, though, with those gorgeous eyes and seductive smile? The way he caressed her thigh during the first course. Julia has to be behind this, Angelina whispers back to Elizabeth. She's always been after Father's money, and now that Andrew and I are officially married, she wants the whole lot for herself. Angelina pinches the bridge of her nose, trying to gather her thoughts. Had she been this desperate for the money, I would have relented. I'd rather have my father alive than his estate. Andrew takes her hand away from her face and entwines her fingers with his. The authorities are on their way. We'll come to a resolution. He reassures her. Julia stirs from her spot in the corner. Leroy, was that not your bottle of wine you shared with the rest of us tonight? How generous of you. The sarcasm comes off like a knife, and ever so slightly Leroy begins to perspire. Julia continues. And did you not uncork the bottle yourself? A way of thanks for the marvelous and expensive night Mr. Lawrence threw for your son and now daughter. You took Mr. Lawrence's glass yourself to fill, denying the waitstaff. Everyone's attention turns to Leroy. Yes, I did bring the wine, uncork the bottle, and pour Mr. Lawrence's glass, but I swear I did nothing of the sort to bring him any harm. I can assure you all that. Leroy dabs his face with a handkerchief. Father would never do such a thing, Mrs. Lawrence, Henry interjects. Absolutely not. What would be his motive? Andrew is standing now, creating a barrier between Julia and his father. Ever so quietly, Elizabeth utters, Unless the poison wasn't meant for Uncle. Andrew turns to face Elizabeth. Elizabeth, what do you mean? Well, remembering now, it didn't seem like an issue at the time. I had come into the dining room first. All the glasses were askew in various heights. There was no reasoning for their placement. I took it upon myself to arrange the wine glasses from tallest to shortest, starting from the left side. She gasps and places a hand to her mouth. Her eyes widen with a realization. The glass I moved to Uncle's placemat was sitting at Andrew's seat. The room is still, quiet. No one says anything. No one engages in eye contact. As if everyone were looking at their own individual particle of dust on the ground, invested in everything else but each other. Where do their fingers turn when the victim of the incidents has entirely changed? The victim who is standing in the center of the room, his head bowed and hands on his hips, his potential murder amongst them. Angelina stands and makes her way to her groom. She takes his hands in hers and faces him towards her. She slightly strokes his cheek. Darling, is there anyone you know of that would want to hurt you? Who would do this to you? On our wedding night? Exhausted, Andrew leans into her. He encircles her waist and embraces her. He lowers his head to rest on her shoulder and says in her ear, I have no idea, but I am certain we are no longer safe here. Angelina gives a faint nod into him as her eyes scan the room. Elizabeth on the couch, Leroy leaning in the entryway to the main room, Henry standing by the flames watching them dance, and Julia staked in the corner, her face turned toward the window, watching her own reflection. She holds Andrew more closely. Her thoughts are broken as the stable-hand son comes running into the main room, the head maid behind him. Both are out of breath. One of the wait staff has stolen a horse from the stable, Mrs. Lawrence. I tried to stop her, I did. I told her no, she couldn't take him, but she did anyways. The stable-hand son exclaims, he is barely the age of 10 years old. Who? Who took the horse? Angelina breaking from Andrew and rushing towards the young boy. It was Priscilla. When we tried to stop her, she pulled out a knife, the maid adds. She must have been the one to put the poison in Andrew's cup, Elizabeth shouts. Yes, certainly, but why? What is the motive? Julia seems calmer now, adding to the conversation. Why would a young girl so full of life, from a humble family, poison a groom on his wedding day? Her head turns to face the group. Her eyes narrow onto Andrew. Andrew, you don't even know Priscilla. Why would she target you? Questions Angelina. I haven't the slightest idea. Clearly, she is unwell to have done such a thing. Something so drastic. Andrew replies, shock in his eyes. But the stable-hand's son looks at Andrew confused. You do know her. I've seen you both together, late at night entering the stable, but you never take the horses out, and you always come back picking hay off each other. Julia breaks into her hysterics again, but instead of sobbing this time, she's uncontrollably laughing. The Dark Files of Lazarus, case number 13. Lazarus, the city built upon the ashes of Los Angeles, has irony in mounds as high as the carbon steel coins piling up in the newly formed vaults. Theo Baxton was the 13th child born into this city after its establishment. Blessed at birth, cursed at life. Again, the irony piles on. Superstitions aside, young Theo had the average childhood of those in the city. A busy father, a mother who stayed at home making a side business for her personal hobbies, schools located on the outskirts as a means to accommodate all from different walks of life, rival gangs that start between said schools and end up either inside of the city or inside the ground. Theo was no exception. he was branded to the Cater Kings, a gang that sought to make money between other gangs as an intermediate and peacekeeping family. Fees were issued to them to end turf wars before they started, a fair sum of carbon steel coins and fruit seeds that could also be traded in for food and weaponry. Young Theo was trained as the accountant of the group, having excelled in his classes of mathematics. In fact, given his devotion to the numbers, he was also allowed to freelance between the gangs. Word would spread throughout Lazarus of the boy genius with a fist in fights and a hand in banks, and he had his own office flat amongst the perks of a local celebrity. This climb would continue for 3 years until the peace was finally shattered. A third world war was an ongoing rumor even in this decade, but the threat of such was a temptation that could no longer be ignored. The federal government, trying to keep its iron hand upon the nation's throat. At the same time, groups of states were seceding from the Union, starting with Texas and Florida. California was arguing its points to secede despite being government central for years. Tensions were high everywhere, and all it would take was one little push. According to an associate of Theo, who wished to remain anonymous, a letter with no return address and a waxed seal pressed with an emblem of a serpent eating its own tail. Inside, Theo told his associate that it was from someone named Enzo, asking for help to what was described as a complicated accounting error. Despite Theo's policy to only work with people within the city, the letter promised a large reward, $50 million in carbon steel, with an extra $5 million sent to him as an incentive. All he had to do was leave his answer outside of his door by the second day of receiving the letter. The answer was yes. On the fourth day, the associate stated that a large sum of carbon steel was made to Theo's personal vault. The bankers, however, refused to divulge information at the time according to their privacy policies, and insisted that since no amount of money was stolen or missing, that this was just another paycheck for Mr. Baxton. Come the afternoon, a large box was delivered to Theo's office, containing paperwork and USBs pertaining to the error mentioned in the letter from Enzo. Theo did examinations and cross-examinations, contacted different businesses, and even got in touch with several tax collectors. Apparently, several different accounts belonging to key figures within the city gangs were seized, and the paperwork of each were sent to the wrong people in authority, all of which were dismissed under negligence. Now, no longer needing any trials, the figures could get their money back, but the public servants refused to be involved with the returns. Instead, Theo was contacted as a representative of the Cater Kings to oversee the return of the physical funds. The associate then told of what happened over the next few weeks. Delivery trucks containing wooden boxes of the promised funds were driven to the outskirts of Lazarus, where the gangs of the prominent figureheads awaited to take to the vaults. Personally, the associate noted 2 things that were strange. All the truck drivers wore masks, and all the boxes were locked with their designated keys back at the vaults, awaiting in the hands and granted access only by the bank personnel. Still, the gangs were happy to have their money back, and they praised Theo and the Cater Kings as heroes. The associate refused to answer any more questions, as he had pled the fifth with great tremoring. He was excused and escorted back to his home. The rest of the case was a jigsaw of events relayed by the media that left Lazarus with blood in the streets, controversies and conspiracies, and many unanswered questions. Several stores and storage facilities of fruit seeds were set ablaze over a course of 9 days. A week later, large crowds were running at large around the streets, whilst throwing glass bottles and broken pieces of concrete at vehicles and buildings. Citizens were set in a panic as droves of gang members washed upon them like a furious flood. The local police had to team up with the city's firefighters to stem the flow of violence, but they were outnumbered and could only give way yard by yard. The hospitals were soon filled to capacity with victims of the assaults, several of which were fatal. What caused this outburst? It turned out that it had to do with a bounty of 10 million carbon steel coins for the capture of Theo Baxton, with double if caught alive. Apparently, one of the heads of the gangs issued the order not long after the delivery of the boxes to the banks. A call was made from the bank once the packages were opened, citing fraud via forgery and non-delivery of goods, followed by a plea for help against an all-out mob assault. The police noted that none of the perpetrators used any weapons outside of the bank's own supplies, from chairs to pens and even magazines, with hysterical employees reporting threats against the traitor, the embezzling rat, with maledictions attached. Theo himself was unable to be reached, for he was no longer in Lazarus. Another of his associates, before dying of his wounds in one of the hospitals mentioned earlier, only uttered this: "Had to get him out. He, not in the wrong, framed. Got him out to a friend. Gotta find Enzo." The assessment by the city's detectives were as followed. Theo was made aware of the goods inside of the containers, which turned out to be lead bars. He was made to lay low as the Cater Kings tried once more to keep the peace. The turmoil was spiraling off the rails, and the Kings were placed in the spotlight. The head of the Cater Kings, who also remains anonymous, promised the others that he would provide them with the guilty party members, i.e., he was going to offer Theo up as a sacrifice. Theo was made aware of this by one or more of his associates, official or on the outside yet on his payroll, and had to arrange for departure. Then came the arson, and that pushed everyone over the edge in desperation, especially with the bounty issued and made public despite the denial of the gang leaders giving such an outcry. Theo and company had to fight their way out of his flat and office to the getaway vehicle, which had to blow through pockets of people, as obtained from the records of different doctors overseeing patients who were all victims to the same speeding car that bowled them onto the streets. All good things must come to an end, and for a young man with a talent for numbers, it was almost curtains. About 900 people were admitted to the hospitals, with 88 losing their lives. Amongst the lost were 13 cops, 15 firefighters, 9 store owners, and a mixture of citizens and gang members. In the aftermath of one of the darkest moments of Lazarus, the questions still rebound about the roads and haunts. Who was Enzo? Who really sent the bounty, if not any of the gang leaders? Where was the money? Where is Theo Baxton? Until the young accountant is apprehended, no one knows. There is doubt that even he will know. Authorities are looking as far as the coastlines, but so are many a gang member, with the Cater Kings intent on making good of their promise. Once, a city of angels was promised. Now, a den of devils has been erected, and it calls out for nothing less than vengeance. Tokyo smoke. Possible triggers: intimidation, slight, mention of drugs, and trial. She flicked the wheel of the lighter. Sparks shot up, followed by a small flame which she held to the end of the cigarette dangling from between her lips. "Talk. You've got about 5 minutes to convince me to let you live." "In that case, mind if I have a cigarette too? That's executioner etiquette, isn't it? Or is that just Hollywood?" "Just Hollywood," she said, but offered me her pack of cigarettes with her free hand just the same. Her other hand, the one hidden from view inside her jacket, pointed a gun at me. Not of the Hollywood variety. This was a Nambu M57. It would get the job done. Time's ticking. She pulled back the hammer for emphasis. The clicking sent a shiver through my entire being, commanding every single hair to stand at attention. "Would you believe me if I said I did it because I love you?" I asked, a futile attempt at lightening the mood. The strange thing, though, was that I meant it. Even then, as I looked at her, knowing full well she'd kill me once the smoldering tip of her cigarette reached the filter. "Really, Takashi, you did it because you love me. My dad is in jail, Mom's awaiting trial for complicity, and Itsuki is awaiting whether he'll be behind bars for 5 years or 27. I thought you liked Itsuki." "I did. But you didn't," I said, while I tried to light the cigarette I kept in the corner of my mouth. It was true. Although I didn't like him at first, he became much like a brother rather than just an in-law after we got married. I didn't look at her as I said it. I was staring at the graffiti frog that had made its appearance on the wall across the train tracks 2 weeks ago. But I knew the face she was giving me. I remembered every line that appeared on her usually smooth skin. "You always complained about how he badmouths you to your dad at every opportunity he got. It's the only reason he was going to take over the company. You're smarter, more experienced, and more ambitious than he was or ever would be. It should have been you, and you know it. As for your da..." "Stop." "As for your dad, Hina, he chewed it up," I continued. "All of it." She poked me with the barrel of the gun to let me know who was in charge here. "That's no reason to have them locked up." True, it wasn't, but it was convenient. For years, even before we got married, she had been complaining about all of them. Her dad most of all. Ever since she was a little girl, she had been preparing to take over her father's company when eventually the time would come. She made sure she got the best grades all throughout primary and middle school. Even at university, she had always been at the top of her class, while on the weekend, she inspected contracts for business deals and saved the company millions by spotting hidden clauses. But none of that mattered. Once Itsuki was born, he was all her dad had cared about. I took a deep drag of my cigarette. Marlboro Gold. I always hated lights. They miss that slight scratching sensation when you inhale. Isn't it though? 5 years ago, during Christmas, when your dad announced that Itsuki would take over your position as CEO, you said you never wanted to see any of them ever again. I didn't mean that. Then you didn't mean it either when you repeated it after he gave you the opportunity to develop your skills elsewhere, for your birthday, I suppose? She was angrily fingering her cigarette, flicking of ash that wasn't there. I could only hope she was a little more careful with the trigger. I still had 3 minutes left after all. "Mind if I get something from the vending machine?" I asked. Last meal and all that. I got up before she could give me an answer and walked over to the overpriced candy dispenser. I fumbled in my pocket for my wallet that wasn't there. "Can I borrow a 500 yen piece, hun?" She didn't move, just raised an eyebrow. "Fine." I looked around, but of course there was nobody around at this hour. The parking lot was empty, but for 4 cars. I turned a quarter turn and forced my elbow through the glass. "Ah, motherfucker. That looks a lot less painful in the movies." I took 3 packs of Pocky from the machine, careful not to cut my hand on the sharp edges. Strawberry, matcha, and the regular ones. I wasn't sure which ones you liked best. I thought strawberry, but it could have been matcha as well. "Anyway, here's both," I said, and sat back down on the hood of my beat-up Honda Odyssey. She didn't try to take any when I offered the box to her. Just took another drag of her cigarette, which was reaching the halfway mark by now. I always liked the original best myself. I took a drag of my own cigarette before taking it from my mouth and taking a bite of 4 of the chocolate-covered sticks at once. Disgusting. I still don't get it. How can you eat and smoke at the same time? I lifted my shoulders in answer and swallowed before blowing out the smoke I'd been holding up in the air to be carried off by the wind. I never had a problem with eating and smoking at the same time. I knew many people who did, though. Back to what I was saying, I did it for us. In return for the evidence about the shipments of cocaine I gave to Nasanto Corp, they offered me 1 billion yen. 1 billion hina. You'd be rid of your family. We could both quit our jobs and move somewhere else. We'd never have to work again. Tell me that doesn't sound like a dream. You wouldn't have to teach at the high school anymore. No more overtime and compulsory socializing with colleagues. Isn't that what you always wanted? Not like this. They are still my family. And how do you think this will look for me? With my family name ruined? I'll be seen as the daughter of some drugs cartel. My parents weren't like that. They didn't even know about it. The arms of the gold-plated station clock twitched. 10:35. The dial was beautifully decorated with the image of a sun that, in the morning, reflected the sunlight so brilliantly that it seemed to shine itself. Now it was barely visible at all. True, that was on Itsuki, but none of that would have happened if you'd been in charge. Besides, your dad will be out in, 3 years? Your mom's sentence will be even shorter. I doubt she'll even have to do any jail time at all. You just don't fucking get it, do you? You think that's the story the media is going to run with? That it was just my brother and the rest of us had nothing to do with it? Sure, I might not be seen as an accomplice, but I'm part of that family. You didn't ruin just them. You ruined all of us. Honestly, I didn't get it. Maybe it was because I'd never been close to my own family, or just because we were rich now and could go wherever we wanted. You took my last name when we married. No one will associate you with them once we move somewhere else. Where'd you want to go? Osaka, or maybe Kochi? You always loved the beach. Hell, we could even go to Europe. You pick a country, and we'll be on the next flight. My eyes were fixed on the entrance of the empty train station. One of the lights illuminating the statue a little to the left of the gates was flickering and drew my attention. It was a statue of a man, but I didn't recognize him. Over the past 6 years I'd been coming here, I'd never taken the time to read the plaque. "You've got about 1 minute left," she said, inspecting the cigarette clutched between her fingers. "I've got to say, you're doing a real bang-up job so far." The gun was still pressed in my side, but it didn't scare me as much anymore. It was just there. "What would you like me to say? That I'll buy you the most beautiful jewelry, a nice car, a big house with a pool? We can have all that if you want, but you already know that." She let another gray cloud escape from her mouth as she nodded. Then she turned to look at me and gave me another look. "Go on. We could have kids, a boat." She scoffed. "Really? You think having kids will fix this? We tried having kids, remember? It didn't exactly work. We could always adopt them. You used to dream of having a boy and a girl. The boy had to be older, you always said. If we adopt them, you can make sure we get that." She let out a deep sigh. "It's almost time, Takashi. Anything you want to say, I suggest you say it now." I took a drag of my cigarette as I thought it over. Your last words are hard to come up with on the spot. I took another drag while staring at the statue again. Who is the statue of? Takashi? Her tone was annoyed more than angry. She prodded me with the gun once more. Yeah, I'm thinking about it." I looked back at her. Her eyes didn't have any emotion left in them. No love, no anger, no sadness. I still love you. I'd want those to be my last words. I still love you, I repeated. She shook her head. Then, right as she shot away the still smoldering cigarette butt, the 10:38 train drove into the station. I took a final drag of my cigarette and shot the butt ahead of me. That's my cue, sayonara. Hoodwinked. The only thing worse than tracing a witness 5 years after is to find out he has forgotten all about the crime, or at least the bits that matter. But Detective Syed was no greenhorn. He smiled at the 19-year-old who was sitting across the table devouring his second plate of chicken kafriel. So, is the chicken tangy enough? Yes, Detective. Thank you for buying me lunch. Daniel D'Souza grinned, his cheeks still plump with the spicy treat tucked in. Not at all. Thanks for agreeing to meet me here. Detective Syed swirled the sparkling water, then took another swig. It was a hot April afternoon, and Baga Beach looked bare. I know it's hard for you to talk about it, but what you can tell me can save a life. The fork fell into the green sauce, and the young man picked it back up. He wiped the corners of his mouth with the paper napkin Britos had stacked at every table, and met Detective Syed's gaze. Sir, I was just 14 at the time, and was visiting my uncle, and helped him in his gallery that sold souvenirs and other knickknacks. Detective Syed completed the statement and cataloged the antiques. It was off-season, and he had very few customers walking in. So, you used to stay till the shop closed in the evening? Yes. And what time would it close? All shops in Panaji close around 8 p.m. I thought you knew it, the youngster snorted. So, you closed at 8 p.m. every evening? Yes. No exceptions? Not any that I can recall? Well, on the 30th of April, 2016, it was open at least till 9:30 p.m. Afterwards, the CCTV blanked out. Oh, it was the last day of the month. Maybe it was open for stock taking, staying open late at night after a whole day of no business? Detective Syed cocked his left eyebrow. Detective, can I leave now? I'm not feeling too well, and I can't recall much. Daniel tried to slide out of his bamboo chair. The detective's eyes held steady. Daniel, I have not even started asking anything yet. And you know I'm going to get to it, one way or the other. So, why don't you help me out here? I can be of no help to you, Detective. I shouldn't even have come here. It was a mistake. Daniel got up and hobbled on the slippery sand. Detective Syed cleared his throat and said in a voice that rose above the waves that crashed outside, we went through the old CCTV footage. It shows someone coming out of the shop at 9:30 p.m. Daniel stopped in his tracks and turned. He walked back to the table and growled. You know, Detective, I was a minor at the time and can't be charged with anything. True, but you could have been sent to a juvenile detention center. Could have been, but wasn't. Wait, for what? Daniel's face turned red. For whatever you didn't confess to, Detective Syed said in an even tone as he gestured for Daniel to sit down. We are not here to talk about it, though. We are here to discuss the footage we got from Tanishq Jewelry 3 days ago. Daniels sported the same look as the fish kept on the ice at the entrance. So, Daniel, how about you sit down and I'll order you a bibinka? No, thanks. I'm full. What is it that you want to know? Daniel, on the night of 30th April 2016, between 9 to 10 p.m., robbers drilled a hole in the back wall of Swarna Jewelers and hauled the stuff worth INR 8 crore with them. As you already know, it's next to Pablo's gallery. You didn't hear anything? No. As my uncle said at the time, I was not there. Daniel rasped through a clenched jaw, which we know now is not true. How can you say that? I'm sure many own a hoodie of the same brand, but I'm sure they will not be wearing one on a humid April night. And who said anything about a hoodie? What hoodie? Daniel countered. Detective Syed let out a chuckle. He knew it was the best antidote for teenage bravado. Okay, the same one that the CCTV outside Tanishq captured 3 days ago. This one should be easier to remember. Daniel's face turned pale. What is the connection between the two? You tell me. The detective parleyed in a calm voice. Okay, I was helping my uncle at the store the night Swarna Jewelers was looted. But I swear, we didn't hear a thing. We had almost finished when a man in a dark blue hoodie turned up at the store asking for a lighter. He was wearing shades, and I found that suspicious. He didn't realize I was watching him as he took out his wallet and dropped a gun. My uncle at the register could not see it, but I did. The vase in my hand fell, and the next moment, the gun was pointed at me. Okay, what happened next? I can't remember what exactly happened. Daniel's eyes were like the floodgates about to be opened. Detective Syed leaned back on his tubby chair, rocked the back of his head in his knitted hands, and cajoled. Take a deep breath and try again. That bibinka is still on the offer? I think my uncle begged him to spare me. The man asked us to turn off the CCTV and stay in the shop, and left. Was that what happened? Yes. And you left the city the next day to return after 5 years? Yes. Only the new CCTV footage we found from Tanishq across the street tells a different story. Detective Syed leaned forward and drummed his fingers on the table. Which is, Daniel sniggered, the man in the hoodie never walked out of the gallery. Daniel's eyes went wide. But you said you saw him walk out. No, it was a 14-year-old who walked out wearing a dead man's hoodie. Daniel gulped air. Detective Syed half shut his eyes, scratched his chin, and continued, and walked back into Tanishq store 3 days ago, and quite possibly other places across Goa before that. I have a theory. He was tracked down by the fellow robbers of the dead man. They made him an offer he could not refuse. Be a part of their gang, or go to juvie for murder. Daniel's face went blank. He whispered in a trembling voice, nice theory. I came back as I got admission into a college in the city, which is a nice cover-up. Daniel, you don't have to tell me what happened at the gallery that night. And I think I know the reason why you wore the same hoodie. Which is? Supposing your theory is correct, you wanted to be rescued. Is that a possibility? Daniel's eyes begged, still too scared to be hopeful. Yes, if you can help nab the gang and finish eating bibinka, a life of regret. When Raj had stealthily installed the I Spy 200 Vision Plus device on his wife's prescription glasses 2 weeks ago, he had no idea the device would enable him to watch and hear from her perspective, in a way, relive her last day alive. It was this morning Raj had received the Blue Dart Courier with the pen drive containing the recording of the last day of Mira's life, her first and only day of wearing her glasses with the I Spy installed, just before the horrific car accident in which her car had been hit on the rear by another fast-moving vehicle. The police believed it to be a truck or a bus. Mira's Ford Endeavor had spiraled out of control and plunged into the river beside the road where she had drowned before she could be rescued. When her car had been pulled out, Raj had collected her things, including her glasses, and sent them to the technical facility of the I Spy Corporation in Mumbai, where the team had extracted the audio and video recorded on the device and mailed the file to Raj on a pen drive along with a hefty check for their services. Taking a deep breath, Raj poured himself a glass of Sauvignon Blanc, which also happened to be Mira's favorite wine, for he needed his courage for what he was about to do. 3 large gulps and soothing warmth in his throat equipped him the nerve to plug in the pen drive and click on the folder dated July 24th, 2021. Wondering what their 16-year-old daughter Hina would think of this blatant breach of his wife's privacy, Raj pressed the play key. The world came into focus with dainty hands with black painted fingernails, placing the glasses over a nose. The camera panned to the left and focused on the other side of the bed, where a portly man lay sleeping with his mouth slightly agape. Raj watched the laptop screen with his heart racing as Mira leaned closer and kissed his bearded face before wrapping her gown around her body and proceeding towards the bathroom. He paused and watched the affectionate gesture again, frowning. He must have been fast asleep because he didn't remember his wife kissing him in the past 3 months. Not since his near-fatal heart attack. Was there a corner of her heart that still loved him, even though she was cheating on him? Raj shrugged the thought away, and taking another sip of the wine, resumed playing the video. In the bathroom, Mira placed her glasses on the bathroom sink while she proceeded to undress and step into the shower. For a few moments, Raj hated himself for lowering the laptop screen. This wasn't why he was spying on his wife, and somewhere in his heart, he knew he was violating her privacy after she was dead, which made it worse. But then he lifted the screen once again to watch his wife bathing, still as glorious at 43 as she was 20 years ago when they had first met. Raj couldn't credit her genes for her fitness levels, for her 2 sisters were both overweight and looked 10 years older than their age. The credit was all Mira's, She loved swimming in the clubhouse and sweating it out in their backyard with her 10-kilogram kettlebell. With a twang of shame, Raj glanced at the tires of fat around his waist, which made it impossible to see his feet without leaning over. Maybe he deserved a wife who cheated on him. After all, he had completely let go of himself over the past 10 years. A factor, his doctor proclaimed, had contributed to Raj suffering a massive heart attack at 46, despite having no history of heart disease. Mira put on her glasses as she emerged from the bathroom and got dressed in a navy blue suit for her office meeting. Each Monday, she had a meeting with her boss, a man she detested but tolerated because it allowed her to provide for her family. As she combed her long, wavy hair and effortlessly styled them into a chignon, Raj caught his own reflection in the mirror on the bed behind her. A middle-aged, unshaven, unemployed man perched on the edge of the bed, wistfully watching his beautiful and successful wife, who was everything he wasn't. Did he feel resentful towards her? Was it her fault she had done well in her life, while he had simply failed at everything he tried? Was it love that still kept them together? Or was she only with him for the sake of their teenage daughter? "I'm going to be late today," she said, without glancing at her husband. "Today's the last date for the submission of the RFP response, and Kana would expect me to finish it before I finish my day." "How late?" he asked desolately. "Late," she said firmly, giving him an icy stare. "Eat your dinner if I'm not home by 8. I hope you can manage to feed yourself and Hina." It was more of a statement than a question. Raj heaved himself from the bed with much effort. "Let me get breakfast started. I'll eat in the office. Anyway, I can't eat anything before my Monday morning meeting, you know that." Through the camera, Raj saw his own sorry figure as Mira grabbed her purse and laptop bag and left the room without another word to him. She paused by their daughter's room, and after a perfunctory knock, opened the door and stepped in, closing the door behind her. Raj remembered sticking his ear to the door, eavesdropping on their conversation. But all he had heard were some muffled noises, as though they were deliberately trying to keep their voices down. It had started 2 months ago, when one night, Raj had woken up to find his wife's side of the bed empty and loud arguing noises coming from their daughter's room. As he had tiptoed to Hina's room, he heard his wife yelling, "Do you know how old you are? I'm 16. I'm not a child anymore. You're just 16. You're still a child. You cannot do this." "I can, and I will," the daughter had argued back. "I forbid you." And on and on. The argument had fired back and forth between mother and daughter until Raj had stepped into the room and both had frozen, and then sputtered an apology for waking him up. Docilely, Hina had apologized to her mother, and Mira had embraced her daughter. But Raj had sensed that it was just a temporary ceasefire owing to his heart condition, And the real issue between mother and daughter was not yet resolved. When he had probed about the subject of the argument, both had dilly-dallied without giving him the truth. While he appreciated their concern for his health, Raj wanted to be part of important discussions affecting their daughter and wasn't happy with being left out. Now he watched keenly as Mira stood facing their daughter, Hina, who was still in bed, as it was early for school. "Good morning, sweetheart," Mira said warmly. Hina, a scrawny 16-year-old girl with crazy curly hair, mumbled a good morning from under the covers. "I was leaving for office. I wanted to talk to you before I go," said Mira, sitting on the edge of the bed. Hina sat up on the bed, rubbing her eyes. "Yes, Mom. Is everything okay? Is Dad okay?" Raj's heart swelled with happiness at the concern he heard in his daughter's voice for his health. While not the most affectionate or expressive person in the room, Hina did show her love occasionally through her gestures. Mira sighed deeply. "Your dad's fine. He's recovering, you know. We can't let anything stress him out." Raj thought Hina looked away guiltily at her mother's words. "You know what I'm talking about, right?" Mira pressed on. "Yes, Mom. Have you met him again? Outside classes?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Of course I'm sure, Mom." Mira's gaze dropped to the bed cover, and her delicate fingers smoothed out the covers. "I know you went to his house on Friday." Hina's expression was that of a deer caught in the headlights. I went to his house to say goodbye," she stammered. Mira's sigh was deep and audible. "I want to believe you. Really, I do. But I can't. You've broken my trust, Hina." Hina was now almost in tears. "I'm so sorry, Mom. But really, I had gone to his house for the last goodbye. I'll never see him again. Except at school, of course, where I can't avoid him." "Good. You know, once your dad is better, we'll do something to fix this problem permanently." Hina's ears perked up at the suggestion. "What do you mean, Mom?" "I mean, there's more we can do to fix this problem. I don't want to do anything right now because of your dad's precarious health. But once he's better," at this, Hina threw the covers and jumped out of bed. "You can't punish him, Mom. It was my fault as much as his. Promise me you won't do anything." Mira rose, placing the strap of her laptop bag across her chest. "I'm not promising anything, sweetheart. Let's talk about our options in a few weeks' time. Until then, if you see him again outside class, I'll know right away." Hina stared at the wall clock behind her mother's head. "I won't see him like I promised." Raj's mind galloped to process the new information he had learned about his daughter. She had a boyfriend. Apparently, a boy from her class. Was that the reason for the strife between his wife and his daughter? Or was there more, he wondered, as he fast-forwarded the part of Mira's day where she attended her Monday morning meeting with her boss and worked in the office. Everything about the exchange surprised him because he was the overprotective parent, constantly worrying about every little thing. regarding their daughter, while Mira was more of a liberal parent who allowed Hina to experiment and even encouraged mistakes, even though he thought it inadvisable for young people to date before 18. What Hina was going through was completely natural and expected. Why had his wife freaked out so much on finding out about Hina's boyfriend? Resuming the video from the point where Mira got into her Ford Endeavor after leaving office, Raj watched keenly as she checked her freshly applied lipstick in the rearview mirror and used her dainty hands to smooth her hair and tuck some wild strands behind her ear. She turned on the ignition and began driving in a direction opposite to where their home was located. When the police had questioned Raj about where his wife was returning from that fateful day, he had surmised that perhaps she had taken a detour to the market to shop for something for their daughter's upcoming 17th birthday. And maybe she had liked something, but wanted to discuss with her husband before buying the gift. Raj wasn't quite sure what had prevented him from sharing his suspicions with the police that his wife was probably having an affair and was returning from a rendezvous with the other man. It was probably as a token of respect for their 18-year-old marriage and consideration for their daughter that Raj had kept his suspicions to himself. With rapt attention, Raj watched the curve of the river, hugging the road, and the familiar city roads zipping past the fast-moving vehicle. As he expected, the car moved through the South City Market and towards the residential area next to it. Mira parked the car behind a dented Mahindra XUV 500, parked in the parking space, and stepped out with her purse over her shoulder. She rummaged through her purse for something, and apparently not finding it in there, she leaned into the car, opened the glove compartment, and extracted a pepper spray. With the pepper spray ensconced in her purse, she marched to the front door and rang the bell. The pepper spray confused Raj. If she was going to meet her lover, he'd have expected her to be rummaging in her purse for something other than a pepper spray. The heavy brown door was opened by a balding man with horn-rimmed glasses on his nose. Mr. Sehgal? Hina's physics teacher? Was Mira having an affair with him? She detested the man and had even argued with him over some marks after the first term examination results. Nothing made sense. The man's face deflated on seeing the visitor. Raj thought Sehgal looked shocked to the point of being afraid on seeing Mira. Surprised? Said Mira. Why? Were you expecting my daughter? I don't know what you're talking about, the man stammered. I know you've been having a romantic relationship with my underage daughter. The man inhaled deeply. I have no idea what you're talking about. I have proof. Those letters you wrote to her. I found them, and I immediately knew they weren't written by a boy, but by a grown-up man. How could you do this? You're at least 50 years old. You disgust me. The man's nostrils flared with fury. Listen, You can't come to my doorstep and accuse me of something I haven't done. You need to leave, he said, beginning to close the door. Mira's ring-studded hand stopped the door from closing. I am leaving, but not before I warn you to stay away from my daughter. If you try to talk to her outside the class again, I'm going to inform the police. The only reason I haven't already contacted them is that Hina begged me. She begged me to let it go, and... Mira paused. The man was peering from behind the half-closed door with his narrowed eyes. And what? Mira sighed deeply. And nothing. I'm not calling the police right now because of my husband, who is ill. I don't want him to know about this mess. But if you contact my daughter again, I'll have no option but to call the police. Raj's world was spinning around him. So this was what the mother-daughter arguments were about. Now that he realized what had happened, it made perfect sense. Why then had his mind jumped to the conclusion that his wife was cheating on him? And the reason Hina was arguing with her mother was that she had somehow found out about her mother's affair. How could he have been so naive to jump to a disturbing conclusion based on a mere happenstance? The only thing Mira was trying to do was protecting their daughter from the pedophile and protecting her sick husband from the stress of the situation. The sudden onset of guilt at suspecting his innocent wife of cheating on him and violating her privacy made Raj sick in his stomach, having half a mind to close the laptop screen. Raj continued watching what was probably the last hour of his late wife's life. Soon, she would be on her way back home, and her Ford Endeavor would be hit on the rear by a vehicle that would send her spinning towards the river and to her death. Things seemed to be moving in slow motion as Mira delivered the final threat to the physics teacher, and leaving him with his jaw hanging, reversed her car out of the driveway, turning around towards her home. As she drove on the highway next to the river, Raj kept his gaze on her rearview mirror, his heart racing. If he was lucky, he'd be able to view the plate number of the vehicle that had hit his wife's car and hand over the evidence to the police. With his heart in his throat, Raj watched several large vehicles on the highway approaching his wife's car, and some of them overtaking it. Resisting an urge to tightly shut his eyes, Raj continued watching the last few minutes of his wife's life. What must be going on in her mind at the time, he wondered. He regretted not telling his wife how much he loved her and how much he appreciated her supporting the family, especially since he had lost his job. He regretted every harsh word he had said to his wife, every missed opportunity to appreciate her. Each occasion he could have been kinder to her. Thinking of their arguments, and every time he had raised his voice at her, made him burn with shame. Was this his punishment for not living a purposeful life, for not living deliberately, but just drifting along the currents of everyday life. Raj sat bolt upright as he saw a vehicle he recognized approach his wife's car from behind. This couldn't be right. Why was the man following her? Raj knew the answer to the question a split second before he saw Segal ram his Mahindra XUV 500 into his wife's car and send her spinning towards the river. Water engulfed the world around him, and he saw the bubbles of air escaping his wife's mouth and nose as the water pressure shattered the windows and rushed into the rapidly sinking car, drowning its only occupant. At some point in time, the glasses drifted away from Mira's face, and through the camera, Raj saw his wife's face for the very last time. Some of the guilt that Raj felt for violating his wife's privacy was washed away with the knowledge that he now had the evidence to bring his wife's murderer to justice. Wiping the tears from his eyes, Raj closed the video file and picked up the phone to dial the police. The cursed town. Content warning. Murder, suicide. He walked up through the dusty road which led to the small town of Tamans. It was twilight, and a light wind was blowing. Far away, the crop plantations acquired a greenish-orange color due to the light of the sun. On the other side, one could catch a faint glimpse of the Tiemens Church, with its tall steeple standing majestically high up in the sky. The yellow-orange hue of the sky washed the town, and the muddy red road was illuminated with a touch of gradient yellow. The whole town looked peaceful, and surprisingly, nobody was outside their houses. He entered the town and looked at the banyan tree in front of him. It had remained much the same. He looked up at the houses and walked towards them. Darkness was falling now. The red-orange hue was slowly swept away, and a dark blue color entered, only with a touch of crimson at its bottom. Shadows fell here and there, creating a spooky atmosphere, and he quickened his pace, as if to avoid the evil spell cast by the shadows of the houses. The moon came up, not too bright, for clouds were starting to surround it from all sides. He glanced upwards and realized that he had to take shelter somewhere. Rainfall could occur any time now. He walked through the dusty and muddy road and looked here around for inns, but there were none. Finally, he found a big apartment which was deserted. He let out a sigh of relief and walked up the stairs and entered the apartment. It was evident that the apartment was still under construction work. It was not completed. However, years of neglect had withered away the raw smell of the brick walls, and small plants could be seen, growing almost everywhere. All of them had a feeling of evil in them. The brick walls, the plants, the floors, and even the ceiling. It was like they had witnessed a lot of sad events and were telling him not to go further inside the house. The house itself was spooky, with its large corridors and almost no rooms. A huge, round staircase led to the other floors. The grayish appearance of the apartment matched perfectly with his gray and withered t-shirt and pants. He went up the staircase and reached the terrace. It was broad and wide, and one could see the beautiful town stretched before it. He looked down and was surprised to see an old woman with a lantern standing in the doorway of the apartment, waving her hands to call him. He descended the staircase and ran out of the apartment to meet the old woman. The woman was short in stature and had gray hair, with sometimes a tint of black in them. Her face was wrinkled, and she looked at him through her cat-green eyes, piercingly. "What are you doing here?" she asked coldly. "I am a visitor, and I came here for certain business matters. I could not find any inn to spend the night in, so I came here," he said. She looked at him suspiciously, and then said, "Okay, you better come with me. This place is not good, especially at night." He nodded his head and followed the old woman. He was cold with fear and could not understand what was happening. He followed her till they reached a cottage, and the old woman asked him to enter. He went inside and enjoyed the warmth of the fire which was lit. He sat down on a sofa, and the woman came to her with a candle. She placed the candle on the table and handed him a plate. "You must be hungry. Here, have some food. You better not go to the apartment anymore." "Why?" he asked. "It's a long story. I have seen too much of this world to remember happy deeds. Most are evil." "What do you actually mean? Do you want to hear?" "Yes, I do." She took a long, deep breath and then began. "Long ago, when I was about 17 years of age, there used to live a plantation owner named Hamilton. He had a lot of money and was very rich. You see those plantations? All those were Sir Hamilton's. He was not only rich, but kind and generous too. He used to donate with open hands. He had a beautiful wife, 4 daughters, and 1 son. However, naturally, his neighbors were very jealous of him and despised him. He did not care that much for that. But one day, his neighbors attacked his family. His daughters were of almost my age then, and the son was only a baby. They killed his daughters and his wife, but somehow Hamilton and his son were able to escape. "Why did not Hamilton inform the police?" he asked. "There was no evidence against the neighbors. He had nothing to do. I later heard that he had fled somewhere to Canada." "But how does it relate to the apartment?" The old woman sighed. Her green eyes glistened, and she said, "The apartment was being made by Hamilton. He wanted to turn it into a hospital." "Yes, but how does that matter anyway?" Rain had started falling heavily, and the fire and candle went out. The 2 people were left in total darkness. However, he could still see the old woman's eyes glistening. the old woman said. For the past few years, there had been a lot of suicides there. Many girls of around 16, 17 years are committing suicide there. It all started with the daughter of Mrs. Morpen. She jumped from the terrace we were standing a few minutes ago. The second case was of Mrs. Rayon's daughter. She was found hanging from the chandelier one morning, her face white and terror-stricken. He was taken aback and looked at the old woman with wide and fearful eyes. Lightning struck, illuminating the whole room for a moment, and he could see the old woman's face, ugly, wrinkled with a strong, piercing glance, which was almost witch-like. He wanted to run out of the house, but some strange power kept him rooted to his seat. The old woman said, "You better go to sleep now. I guess you had a very tiresome day." The old woman showed him his bedroom, and he fell down on his bed, immediately asleep. The next morning, when he woke up, he could see the sun shining brilliantly outside. He heaved himself up and went to the living room. The old woman was preparing coffee. She handed him a cup, and he sat down on the sofa. He drank from the cup the delicious, thick cappuccino and felt refreshed. He almost forgot all the horrible incidents from yesterday night. "Where do you want to go today? I can show you the way. It is evident that you are new to this place, as you were talking about inns in here. I have heard about Kingsman's Place here. Can you please take me there?" "Kingsman's Place? Okay, I will. It is a business center here. When do you want to go?" "About 9:30. What do you say? Please prepare a packed lunch for me." "Of course. Get ready then." He went back to his bedroom and took out his suitcase. He looked at himself in the mirror. He was middle-aged, but still, he looked pretty young. He brought out a coat, shirt, and pant, and put it on. He looked the perfect businessman. After having breakfast, the two went out. On the way, they came across the Flint River. There he saw some girls whispering and talking together. One of them was extremely beautiful. Her fair skin with an orange tint made one remember pure milk. Her eyes were a deep blue, and she had beautiful black eyelashes. Her cheeks were pink, and her lips were a light red. Her mass of curls was thrown at her back, and she wore a pretty green dress. Her hands were well-toned, and her legs were slender and well-shaped. She looked a pretty picture. He stared at her for some time, and then she turned to the old woman, and pointing to the girl, he asked, "Who is that girl?" The old woman glanced at the girl and then said, "She is Mr. Trudeau's daughter." "Pretty, isn't she?" "Yes," he said. "What is her age?" "About 17. He sighed and gestured at the old woman to move forward. They reached Kingsman S. Place, and the old woman left him there with his lunchbox. He did not wait there. As soon as the old woman was out of sight, he started running. He did not stop until he reached the old building. He entered and went up to the terrace. The terrace was absolutely empty. Despite being so large, the parapets were very low, and there were high risks of falling to death in case of an accidental slip. Unlike the rest of the house, almost no plants were there on the terrace due to some unknown reason. He roamed here and there on the terrace. He stepped very carefully, and whenever he looked down, he was sick at the sight of houses so far down below. He hated heights and was afraid of them. He went downstairs and waited. "You know, Laura, I will go to Grandma Fontaine's house today." The words kept ringing in his mind. To reach Grandma Fontaine's house, she had to cross this building. There she was coming, alone. Nobody was with her. He waited silently, and as soon as she came in front of the apartment, he gripped her hand and pulled her inside. Before she could scream, he put a handkerchief under her nose, and smelling the chloroform, she fell unconscious. He now prepared for it. He dragged her upstairs to the terrace and carefully washed her face. He then threw her down the parapet, and she landed with a loud thud sound. Dead. Yes, she was dead. Blood was flowing from her, and her pretty face was peaceful. He quickly fled from the place before anybody could see him. He did not return to the old woman's house. He kept walking towards the outskirts of the town. It would take him almost 3 hours to get out. He had seen his own sisters and mother get killed in front of him. Those Morpins, Rayons, Trudeaus, and Greys have killed them out of jealousy. He and his father had somehow fled. But after some time, his father also died. He died saying, "Kill Morpin, kill Trudeau, kill Rayon, kill Grey. Don't let them live." He had done that. He had killed all of them, except Grey's daughter. He would be back for her after the next 4 years. Yes, he would not let her live. They do not deserve to live. They had destroyed his life. He would destroy theirs. He would not let them be happy when his own happiness had been snatched away from him. Never. He looked back at the town. It was twilight yet again. The town looked peaceful, but he could hear faint sounds of crying. Let them cry. They will have to cry again after 4 years. He turned and walked away from the town as darkness fell and made the town silent.